Um, Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this edition of What's Up with the Region. It's our monthly current event series, co-hosted with the Mirowitz Center at Covenant Place. So I'd like to turn it over to our friend Stephen Cohn to give a brief welcome.
Well, it's my pleasure to welcome everybody to the session, which we are so proud to be co-hosting with the JCRC. It's a most informative and important and relevant series, and we are delighted to be able to do this with you. We thank you, and we encourage all of you to check out our website and our e-blast and read about our other upcoming programs at the Mirowitz Center. At the same time, we wish all of you who are going to be observing the upcoming New Year a very healthy and happy Shana Tova.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you and the Mirowitz Center for your ongoing support of our What's Up with the Region series. We can't only wait until we can be back at the Mirowitz Center and back seeing all of you in person. So again, good afternoon and welcome. I'm Cheryl Adelstein. I'm the Deputy Director of the Jewish Community Relations Council, and along with my various colleagues on the call, including Alyssa Banford and Marla Ulrich, we're happy to bring you What's Up with the Region. Our topic today is reimagining public safety and policing reform. This is an important area for us to be discussing. As many of you know, several months ago, we initiated the Jewish Coalition for Racial Equity, and our coalition has decided that policing reform and the Jewish community involvement in policing reform is going to be an element of our work. And we always feel like the first way to begin our work is to do education. So we have two great speakers today, Senator Brian Williams and Jeanette Mott-Oxford, who's the Executive Director of Empower Missouri. And before I bring either one of them on, I'm gonna do a little talking, not because I'm an expert, but because there's really a lot of important context to share. And I want to talk a little bit about Forward Through Ferguson and give us a little background and history about the need for policing reform. I do want to say, for full transparency, I worked hard to try to get someone from Forward Through Ferguson to join us today, and just everyone was so busy no one could. So I am using their materials, and I am not an expert, but I believe I can share with you enough context that will help set the stage for what Jeanette Mott-Oxford, who we all call JMO, and Brian Senator Williams will talk with us about. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and walk you through some things. Okay, so for those of you who are not familiar, this is the Forward Through Ferguson website, and Forward Through Ferguson is a report that was issued by the Ferguson Commission in 2014 after they studied for almost a year in the aftermath of the Michael Brown killing. And Forward Through Ferguson issued a very large report with many, many calls to action that included justice for all, youth at the center, opportunity to thrive, and racial equity. And we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about justice for all and a few of the specific recommendations in the report that I remind you was issued in 2014, 6 years ago. So first I want to start with a brief video. This is Brian M. Watson, a veteran police officer with over 30 years of experience in St. Louis County Police Department from 1981 to 2008. He's a member of Backstoppers, which is a St. Louis-based nonprofit that provides financial assistance to families of fallen law enforcement officers. So if all goes well, you're going to see this video. Alyssa, give me a thumbs up if it's playing.
I was just driving along one day, and just like I always do with my wife and I, we're just holding a conversation in the car. And I look up in my rearview mirror and I see some red lights behind me, and I'm thinking that it's a police officer wanting to get by. So I pull over to the right and I'm waiting for him to go by, and I look back in my mirror and he's directly behind me. So I'm assuming, okay, I'm the one he wants. The whole time I'm thinking, what did I do wrong? And I'm trying to remember if I got my license plates renewed and, just trying to go through what most people would go through at that time. What did I do wrong? The officer came up to me and I specifically asked him right off, why had I been pulled over? And he basically asked for my driver's license without answering my question. And he never would respond either way, which I thought was kind of unusual. I thought that was something that you would have a conversation with me about at least. And he got my driver's license and he just walked back to the car. I've been a police officer now for 35 years. I've been in public service just about all my life, it seems. I've been involved with the United States Army. Public service and serving my country has always been pretty dear to me. I have a habit of not identifying myself to the police, and the reason that I do that is that it gives me an opportunity to see how I would be treated, not only as a police officer, but as a civilian, a citizen, a black man. When he came back up, he handed my driver's license to me, and I says, "Officer, can you tell me why I've been stopped? Is something wrong with my vehicle or what's going on?" He did not reply right away. And I says, "I feel like I have a right to know why I've been stopped, officer. Being a police officer myself, I think that when I stop people, I normally let them know why I stopped them." Once he found out I was a police officer, the whole conversation changed. At that moment, you could see the look on his face as, wow, I've been had. He was somewhat embarrassed and somewhat a little angry that I had put him in that position. And I didn't purposely put him in that position to make him feel that way. I just wanted to plant that seed in his mind that you never know who you're stopping. I can only surmise by all of that is that it was just a traffic stop, seeing if I had warrants, to see if my license were suspended or if there was some other ticket he could give me for my driver's license. I just want people to understand, and police officers in particular, that we need to treat people like we would want to be treated.
So that was from Officer Watson. Just a reminder about policing reform and some of the racial disparities that we see in terms of practice. And now what I want to do is just look at the Ferguson Commission report, specifically the Justice for All section. Just to, if you're not familiar with it, just to familiarize you with the calls of action from 6 years ago that we're hearing again today. So within this section of the report, there's priorities: policing reform, court reform, and consolidation. Today, we're only going to be talking about police reform. And specifically, we're going to be looking at use of force, training, civilian review, and response to demonstrations. So what did the Ferguson Commission report say about these things? The reason that they highlighted these is that they believe that they merit urgent attention. Use of force, and I'm going to read you this definition. Use of force is part of law enforcement work, and law enforcement agencies have policies that outline the appropriate use of force. These policies describe a use of force continuum, an escalating series of actions that an officer may take to resolve a situation ranging from simple officer presence, where no force is used, up to lethal force, where a lethal weapon is used to gain control of a situation. And that's from the National Institute of Justice. And so what the commission report said is policies and training on use of force should authorize only a minimal amount of force necessary to protect citizens and officer safety, and that's proportional to the incident. And excessive use of force, is a problem because it disrespects citizens' constitutional and human rights. But there's other negative consequences. The regular use, I'm reading right here, The regular use of force has led many citizens to view the police as an occupying force in their neighborhoods, damaging community trust and making community safety even more difficult. So what the report called for is decreased use of force, and they said that they will require revised policies, training, and culture to get to a decreasing use of force. And as part of getting there, for policing and training changes to take hold, there must be a change in law enforcement culture. Law enforcement organizations must adopt rules and policies that emphasize the guardian role, which is defined by procedural justice, respect, and the protection of human rights. And that's from the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing. So the report goes on further to say, when force is used, investigations must be free from bias. So those who investigate the investigations may not be biased. And the signature calls to action on this issue are revised use of force policies and training, establishing a use of force database, assigning the Attorney General as a special prosecutor in use of force cases, and creating task forces for short-term investigation of use in force, and updating use of force statutes for fleeing suspects. So we could actually have a seminar on each of these, and we don't have time for it. So this is clearly an overview, and I can share these links with you. They also had a section on training and asking for more training. Current training is insufficient and inconsistent. So they had calls to action regarding consolidated police training centers, increased police training hours, including implicit bias and cultural responsiveness training. They also had a section on civilian review and how you bring civilian review into police misconduct. So there's a whole section on that. And those sections call on creating civilian review boards at the municipal level, so for municipal police departments, and also at the county level. And finally, another priority call to action was a response to demonstrations, asking police departments to develop comprehensive demonstration response plans that have appropriate use of force. So that's what the report said in 2014. I'm going to fast forward briefly to 2018. In 2018, Forward Through Ferguson put out this report, the state of the report tracking the Ferguson Commission's calls to action in August 2018. I'm going to go back to page 8. So in this report, they interviewed a variety of stakeholders and 38 participant responses. And then they rated progress from 0 to 5, with 0 being no or little implementation, 1 to 2 being some programmatic, and 2 to 3.5 being a blend of programmatic and big and small policy implementation. So what I want to do briefly is just show you the Justice for All component of this. I'm going to make it a little bigger, so hopefully you can see it. So this is to demonstrate that there is some things happening. Some things happened from 2014 to 2018, but it hasn't been a lot. It hasn't been great. The community-based policing report got a 2.1. You can see some of these things that we just discussed, creating civilian review boards. Some of them have slightly higher grades than others. Nothing is anywhere near 3.5. Consolidated law enforcement agencies, there was some of that. But you can see the average score on policing reform is about 2.7. So still a lot of ways to go. And from there, I want to jump to one more report, and then I'm about ready to finish my remarks. So then in 2019, exactly 1 year ago from now, Forward Through Ferguson issued the State of Police Reform, September 2019. They wanted to really dig into this issue and see where we were. So what this report did, and again, all these are available on the Forward Through Ferguson website. I'm going to go over the executive summary of it. They looked specifically at 3 jurisdictions: the Ferguson Police Department, the North County Police Cooperative, and that's where a bunch of North County police departments have come together, and the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. And they looked at a window over 5 years, and they had conversations with 57 stakeholders. And here's what they found. And again, it's too difficult over Zoom for you to see all this and for me to go into in any detail. But they looked at what has changed in Ferguson, in the North County Police Cooperative, and at St. Louis Police Department. And take a quick look at the key. If it's empty, that means no progress. A quarter, some progress. Half, a little bit of more progress. 3/4, policy-focused implementation activities that seem to be leading to culture changes. That's what we're looking for. And 4, nearly complete. So you can see in quickly looking at this list, just by looking at the pie shapes, we've got some things happening here. Some good things in Ferguson regarding updating use of force for fleeing suspects, but not so much progress in the city of St. Louis. Consolidated law enforcement agencies, you can see because of this North County Cooperative. Comprehensive demonstration plans, not much progress. So again, things have been happening, but we have a lot more space to go. And all of these things were being thought about and talked about long before May 29th, long before George Floyd was murdered. And I just think it's important to share that. This policing reform and this idea of changing policing is not like, oh, this just happened. People have been thinking about it and working on it for a long time. The last thing I just want to show is what factors have facilitated or held back change. What is it that helps make change? Well, in Ferguson, it was legally mandated required police changes from the federal initiative. In North County, it talked about organic growth and community-oriented roots. In St. Louis City, it said close and persistent public scrutiny. And what are some of the barriers? Leadership, focus on programs and practice over policy. And across all jurisdictions, what helps? Relationship and community building, community intention and involvement, the guarantee that someone is watching. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes a moment of crisis. So that's what I wanted to share with you in terms of background. And really what I want to do at this point, I wanted to provide you with some context, and I'd be happy to take questions, although you can see where I'm getting my information from, so I'm not an expert. But the point I wanted to make is that this is not new. We've been talking about this in our region for the last 5 years, and our panelists today can really bring us up to date. So we have 2 great panelists today. Jeanette Mott Oxford with Empower Missouri and Senator Brian Williams. JMO will discuss an area which we know occurs in St. Louis and throughout the state about our vehicle stops and the need for a 4th Amendment Affirmation Act. And she'll be followed by Senator Williams to discuss legislation on use of force in the 2021 General Assembly. So Alyssa, I know that JMO has slides, so if you want to make her a co-host while I do her introductions. Jeanette Mott Oxford, who, as I said, goes by JMO, is the executive director of Empower Missouri, which is a 100-plus-year-old citizen organization. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Empower Missouri advocates for the well-being of all Missourians through civic leadership, education, and research. JMO was also a state representative for the portion of the city of St. Louis, including my neighborhood from 2005 to 2012. JMO's been an advocate, educator, writer, and organizer on issues of poverty, health, housing, racism, human rights, equality, and campaign finance reform in Illinois, Kansas, and Missouri since 1983. She was the executive director of the Reform Organization for Welfare, called ROWL, from 91 to 2000, and the founder for the Coalition Against Public Funding for Stadiums, when use of tax dollars was proposed for the new Cardinal Ballpark in 2001. JMO is a graduate of Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, and also has a Master of Divinity from Eden Theological Seminary. And she received an honorary doctorate in humane letters to Oxford in 2010. So it's my pleasure to introduce Jeanette Mott Oxford, who is also, in addition to a colleague, a dear friend.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. And I have not been able to start sharing doing the share screen yet. So whoever's helping you with that, you might give them another nudge that they need to help us out here so that I can share my screen. I apparently need to update my bio. I actually have a new title with Empower Missouri since June. I'm the Director of Policy and Organizing. I was hired as Executive Director in 2012. We have a new 4-year strategic plan that includes some succession planning in it. You probably can't tell by looking at me, but I'm 66. I hope to retire when I'm 70. And we thought that it might be a good idea to bring on a new permanent executive director before I go, so that we can do some work together. And I love the policy and organizing part of our work. So I get to focus especially on that and mentoring the rest of our policy and organizing staff in my final years with the organization. So I'm excited about this change, and I'm sorry if I gave you the wrong title there. So be watching for announcements about our search for a new executive director, and perhaps you know people that you can refer to apply to us. We do have a tool in the Attorney General's Vehicle Stops Report, which comes out annually. And a little bit about Empower Missouri. Cheryl has already shared with you a bit about our mission. Our vision is a Missouri in which all people have food, shelter, and justice. We believe that adequate nutrition, affordable housing, and equal justice are essential for Missouri's success, that all structural oppressions should be recognized, challenged, and dismantled, that evidence-based public policy is foundational for those who govern, and that the lawmaking process should be truly accessible to all in our state. We keep people informed about what's going on in the Missouri General Assembly and the U.S. Congress in 6 issue areas: affordable housing and homelessness, criminal justice, economic justice, health and mental health, human rights, and food security. And we staff coalitions that work on 4 of those areas. Our Affordable Housing and Homelessness Coalition meets at 2 o'clock today. We have a criminal justice 2 task forces that meet on that. Smart Sentencing, which meets this Friday at 11. Our HIV Justice Coalition meets on Fridays.
Missouri.
Our HIV Justice Coalition meets on 2 Fridays a month at 1 o'clock, and you can find the schedule on our website. And then we have a Food Security Coalition that is meeting this Friday at 9 a.m. So if you want to know about any of those, just go to our website at empowermissouri.org and click on coalitions, and you'll find details about that, or on events, and you'll find how to register or to go to the link that lets you join those meetings. Here's what happened around the Vehicle Stops Report. There'd been a lot of expression of concern about whether there was bias in traffic enforcement, and that led to the passage of a bill, Senate Bill 1053, back in 2000. That created Section 590.650 of the Regulations of the State of Missouri, or RISMO for short, and that became effective on August 28th of 2000. There's a Vehicle Stops Report that's required of the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office must collect data about traffic stops from all law enforcement officers in the state of Missouri. And you can find this on the Attorney General's website at ago.mo.gov. If you click on programs, it'll take you to a list of things that you can pick, and you can pick Vehicle Stops Report and then get every report. You can go, click on the year, kind of like Cheryl was doing with the Forward Through Ferguson materials. You can go to any particular year and study it, and then you can also go to data for your particular municipality. The methodology of the VSR is that all peace officers are required to collect specific information, including the driver's race, for each vehicle stop made in the state. They have to turn that in by March 1st of each year, and then the Attorney General's office crunches all that data and issues a report to the governor, the General Assembly, to the law enforcement agencies, and to the general public by June 1st of each year. Occasionally, if June 1st is on a weekend, they may release it on like the Friday before that. That's happened on in some recent years when the June 1st was happening on a weekend. The law allows the governor to withhold state funds from any agency that does not submit its vehicle stops data to the Attorney General by the deadline. That penalty is about whether or not you turn in the data, not what the data says. And so we'll talk just a little bit more about accountability as we move on down here. The Attorney General is changing some things about how the data is collected. They had some conversations with law enforcement in 2019 and began implementing these changes. The residential zip code of the stop driver was added to what's collected. The cause of citations and/or warnings issued to the driver was added. This was because police were saying, well, I had to stop the car because I noticed that this vehicle had a bench warrant out, and so that made me have to stop the car. So they are collecting some additional things. And then they've added some new response options in order to get richer data. And some of the questions have been adjusted for clarity. So there have been some changes made fairly recently. Here's what the trends have shown from 2000 to 2019. And here I'm talking about statewide. I'm not looking just at one municipality in the St. Louis County or the St. Louis Municipal Police Department, but looking statewide at the trends. The red,
Matt,
yes?
I'm just going to stop you for a second and say, can you put yourself in slideshow mode?
Oh,
And that way we can see the slide a little bit bigger. If you just
Sure.
say slideshow and go a few more tabs over. Slideshow and from current slide.
Whoops, from beginning. Let's go to.
No, go from current, here we go.
All right, thank you. Sorry that I didn't start that way. So here are our trends. The red line is for Black drivers. The blue line is for white drivers. Here's the year 2000, the first year that they started to collect data. And then here's 2019. This is 2020 out on the edge. They've started to collect the data that will be in the 2020 report, but the 2020 report, they'll turn that information in on March 1st of 2021, and then the report will be produced by June 1st of 2021 for us to see the 2020 data. But as you can see, the line, the percentage, the disparity index of how many people who were stopped who are Black has gone up throughout the time period that we've been collecting the data. The number of people who are white who are stopped has stayed fairly constant, going down slightly in recent years. So you might say, well, does that mean we've just had worse and worse policing? I don't think we can say that. I think we can say that in part, maybe departments are taking it more seriously to collect their data carefully, and that we perhaps are having more accurate information turned in over time. I don't know for sure that we can say, well, this is showing that it's just getting worse all the time necessarily. But it certainly is a cause for concern that this is the way the graph looks. I think we would all agree about that. If we compare the percentage of people in our state, looking at US Census data, to who is stopped in our state in 2019, 83% of our state was white, 11% of our state was Black, and 6% was other. But of people stopped by law enforcement agencies, 76% instead of 83 were white, 20% were Black, and 4% were other. So that's a real concern, of course. Law enforcement has consistently objected about this report, saying that it's unfair, that it makes them look racist when they are not. And the kind of things that we hear most frequently are, we don't know what race people are when we stop the car. Sometimes we can't see into the car because it's night and so it's too dark to see, or even in the daytime, people have tinted windows, so we can't see what race people are. The disparities of race in the report are caused by a difference between driving patterns between the zip code of where our agency is and who's on the road. After all, you could look at, this often gets cited on Highway 40. There's a lot of people going to a place like the Galleria, to a mall. And yet, if for the Ladue Police Department, the number of people driving through Ladue who are Black is way different than the number of people who are African American living in Ladue. So those kind of things get cited as why this report is somehow unfair. Empower Missouri looks especially then at some parts of the vehicle stops report that's available to us, where you're far enough into a traffic stop that the peace officer has likely formed an impression about ethnicity by that point. For example, will the driver be asked for a consent search? You don't make that decision right at the very beginning. You usually got the person's window down, you've been talking to them for a while, and then the officer will say, well, can I search your car? Does the peace officer find contraband on the driver or in their car? And then will the driver be charged with resisting arrest? These are some things that happen far enough along in the stop that we think that they are especially important data to look at. Looking at the search rates, who gets asked for a search? Black people have the highest rate of being asked for a consent search. Hispanic people, secondly, then white drivers, American Indians, folks from other races that have several categories put together, and then Asian drivers. And so it would be important to know, well, where are we finding the contraband? Because that would indicate maybe how we should be asking for consent searches. And where the contraband is the most contraband is found in cars with white drivers. But that's not where the most of our scrutiny around consent searches were. Then slightly less among Black drivers, and then among Hispanic drivers, other Asian and American Indian. So there's no real lineup exactly there. I don't have a graph for you on who gets charged with resisting arrest, but I can tell you that consistently Black drivers have also disproportionately been arrested for resisting arrest. And I think this is somewhat similar to the data that we get when we study juvenile justice. We know that when kids are put into a hearing process as to whether they will be certified to stand trial as adults, Black kids are 6 times more likely to be certified to stand trial as an adult than white drivers are. So there's something that goes on there. If law enforcement officers know how to de-escalate a situation so that they don't charge a white driver with resisting arrest, why aren't they similarly successful with Black drivers? And I think that disparity around how courts see juveniles and how law enforcement officers see Black folks as somehow more threatening, that there may be some commonality there that tells us that we do need to do better training around things like implicit bias and de-escalation techniques. Maybe we would have a better outcome in that case. There have been some efforts to add accountability because, as I said earlier on, that thing where the governor can withhold some money is about, did you turn in your report? You don't have to do well on your report. You get credit for turning it in no matter what, but there's nothing about accountability in the vehicle stops report information as it stands right now. Representative Shamid Dogan, who's a Republican from Baldwin, the only African American on the majority caucus side of the aisle in the House, has been trying to add accountability to the vehicle stops report. He's been annually filing a bill called the John Ashcroft Fourth Amendment Affirmation Act. It was House Bill 2070 in 2020. He has not been able to get this bill passed in the House. He's been able to get it out of his committee once as part of a House committee bill, I think last year, but it didn't pass on the floor. What he puts in there around accountability is If a law enforcement agency continues to show a significant disproportion in its data for 3 years in a row, the Attorney General will evaluate whether they're making a good faith effort to achieve non-discriminatory policing. If they need to continue being supervised as a minimum penalty, the agency would stay under review with ongoing Attorney General oversight. A maximum penalty would be that if after 6 years of review you're not getting better, the Attorney General could order 25% of your general operating revenue withheld, taking that out of the fines, bond forfeitures, and court costs for traffic violations, including amended charges for any traffic violations. That's a source of income that police departments have, and the Attorney General could take some money away from you as a way to say, well, you need to get serious about fixing this because you haven't so far. And then that penalty could continue until such time as the Attorney General determined that discriminatory policing is no longer a cause of the significant proportion. So that's what's been going on with that. There are some citizens groups in our state that have looked at the Attorney General's data and then have gone to their police department and tried to have conversations. That has not gone very well in Jefferson City, where a group of citizens tried to do that. Because we release a press release about this data annually, they refused to come to the table if Empower Missouri was there, unfortunately. They said that we were trying to make them look bad. Well, we really weren't trying to make them look bad. We were trying to enter into a conversation about why does the data look this way? The data in Jefferson City has been particularly interesting because the people in the prisons in Jefferson City count in their U.S. Census data. And our prisons are disproportionately filled up with Black people, unfortunately. If you've read Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, you know about how mass incarceration has real racial disparities around who's in prison. And yet, if you look just at people, now they're collecting that zip code data. If you look at just who stopped in each zip code and compare it to who actually lives who stopped, who lives in that zip code, there's still racial disproportions in Jefferson City. And we wanted to have a conversation about that. Why does it look this way in Jefferson City? Hopefully those conversations are going to eventually happen, but they said they didn't want to have that conversation with Empower Missouri at the table. And that's been a great disappointment. Here's how to get in touch with me if you're interested in more information. My email address and our website. We are on Twitter and we're on Facebook as well. And I would welcome any questions that you have right now or later after you've thought about it for a while.
So why don't we take 1 or 2 questions for Jeanette, and then we'll move on to Senator Williams. Does anyone have a question for Jeanette?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, Harvey.
Hi, I'm Harvey Cantor. I was wondering, in the list of 3 things that you mentioned, in terms of factors, I think, contributing to this disparity, disproportion, why there was no mention of quality of education, because to me, that's a vital and extremely important aspect of the continuing poor quality of services our community provides for people under economic stress and of color. So why isn't there mention of educational deprivation, if you will?
Do you mean why do the police officers not collect information about like what grade level people completed?
Well, where Empower Missouri focuses.
Okay.
Why are we focusing more on that?
I'll tell you why. It's because we don't have the capacity. We have 6 staff members for the whole state, and we assessed where are there already groups working on things and where can our particular gifts be most useful. And we decided to focus on food security, housing security, and criminal justice as the main places that we focus. We saw that there were other organizations like Kids Win Missouri, like a group called Aligned, the Missouri National Education Association, et cetera. There are other groups that are focusing on educational equity, and we didn't believe that we had the ability to focus on education in addition to the things that we're focusing on. We're just not big enough. If you all want to write a check right now, maybe we could take some more things on. But we don't think that we can at the size that we are right now, and that there are some other groups that are focusing on that. We do believe, however, that our work on food security and housing security will have a real impact on how people do in schools, because a lot of how people do in schools is influenced by something called adverse childhood experiences. Do children have enough to eat so that their bodies can develop in a healthy fashion? Is their housing stable? And for that matter, another adverse childhood experience is, do you have a parent who's incarcerated? Our work will have a lot to do with outcomes at schools, because the more adverse childhood experiences that children have in those first 5 years of their life, it determines how their brains get wired. About 90% or more of our brain develops in the first 5 years of our lives, a lot of it in the first 3 years of our lives. And our ability to do things like plan, to postpone gratification, to control our impulses. There are so many things that are shaped by how many of those adverse childhood experiences that we have happen to us. So we've done a lot of study about trauma and toxic stress and how it influences brain development. We think our real contribution to education is trying to make sure that basic human needs like food and shelter are covered, and that we keep everybody out of jail that we can by having equal justice before the law.
Jeanette, thank you so much. I'm going to cut it off at this point because we need to bring on
Sure.
Senator Williams. So if you could stop sharing your screen, Jeanette, and we'll bring up Senator Williams. So Senator Brian Williams is a Democrat who represents the 14th Senatorial District in St. Louis County. He represents many of the people on this call in the U-City area and north of there. He grew up in Ferguson and attained an undergraduate degree from Southeast Missouri State and a master's degree in public administration from Wash U. Studying government and public health policy led Senator Williams to pursue a career in public service. After graduating, he went on to work for several years as a congressional staffer and oversaw the rollout of the Affordable Care Act marketplace in Missouri. Senator Williams, in addition to all the committees he serves on in the Senate, is also on the board of directors for People's Health Centers, as well as the advisory board for Simmons Bank, iHeartMedia, and St. Louis Crisis Nursery. And he's a proud member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, Inc. So Senator Williams, thank you for being with us today. Senator Williams is going to talk with us about specifically use of force and the bill that he's proposing for the next session of the General Assembly. Senator Williams?
Hi, Cheryl. First, I want to thank the Jewish Community Relations Council, as partners, and as well as everyone else who's on the call for your time this afternoon. I'm really looking forward to having a productive conversation, not only around police reform, but how we can all work together to continue to move our state and our region forward. Earlier this month, the Missouri legislature wrapped up its special session on public safety. As a Democrat and currently the only Black male in the Missouri Senate, I'm in favor of doing everything we can to prevent violent crime, especially gun violence, throughout our state. At one point during the special session, the House had sent over a bill that would have made it legal for anyone to give a kid a gun without their parents' permission. I think we can all agree that how dangerous of an idea that is. We fixed that bill in the Senate, but it wasn't easy. Some legislators were determined to put more guns in the wrong hands, and everyone, a part of the community, realized that it wouldn't be safe. The challenge we face is the legislature together to address crime. The result was almost more guns on our streets. And as we try to move forward, we understand that there are some who want to take us in the wrong direction. In fact, most of the legislation originally put forward by the governor would not address violent crime before it happened. It would only double down on the failed policy of lock them up and throw away the key. It also would have never worked to deal with anything that we've had in terms of crime in the past, and it will not work in the future. Until the governor and our Republican majority decide to address the root causes of crime, the chances for real change is small. And that's why I'll continue to fight for things like expanding mental health services, ramping up job training in underserved communities, like the ones I represent in St. Louis County, as well as helping more young people graduate high school, prepare for a career or college, as Harvey was stating earlier, reinstating Missouri background check laws for gun sales. And as we know, in 2007, the legislature voted for Senate Bill 62, which repealed the law that required background checks on all sales and transfers of handguns. Since then, we've seen a 25% increase in firearm homicide, especially right here in in St. Louis, and as well as communities like Kansas City. So it's clear that we have to rip out violent crime by its roots, and we must implement common sense police reforms. One of the most important things that we can do to make our streets safer is to improve the relationship between police officers and the communities that they serve. The men and women of law enforcement, as we all know, risk their lives each and every day. My uncle was a police officer for 27 years in St. Louis Police Department. And throughout that 27-year tenure, there was not one time that he shot or had to be forced to shoot an unarmed person, let alone a person of color. So we know that it's a very tough job, but outside of them risking their lives, they deserve to know that there are elected officials that are doing everything we can to protect the integrity of their profession. Through common sense reforms, like I'm proposing with Senate Bill 16, we would do things like ban chokeholds, requiring de-escalation training, and prohibiting unnecessary no-knock warrants. Right here in St. Louis County, we had a situation which led to St. Louis County Police Department being sued for roughly $1 million for an no-knock warrant, which led to a woman's dog being killed for an unpaid utility bill. We can improve our police and community relations by tackling these reforms, but also restore the trust that it's the very foundation of public safety. With my conversations with the governor, I've made it very clear, as well as my colleagues, that this is not an us versus them situation. This is simply but important reforms that are embraced by law enforcement agencies across the country, and they have bipartisan support right here in Missouri. And I think about folks like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Michael Brown Jr., and countless other Black men and women who should still be alive today. And as we all know, we can't bring them back, but we can prevent further deaths by passing reasonable police reforms and protecting Missourians and officers who serve them. As I conclude, I want to also make sure that it's clear that the governor said that he doesn't have time to address this issue, and I think that's really unfortunate. And the question I asked the governor last time we spoke was, if not now, when? And if not us, who? The special session was supposed to be about public safety, and these reforms will keep the public safe. And I'd like to make it clear to everyone on this call, as well as the communities I serve throughout my district and beyond, that this is a fight that I will not give up. And I'm proud to have partners like Empower Missouri, ACLU, and many others. For when we go back in January and the legislature reconvenes, I'll file this legislation with these reforms and more to make sure that the issue remains front and center. And I truly believe this is something that we can do. This is something that we must do. And with the continued support of lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, organizations like the JCRC and beyond, police officers around the state, and overwhelming public support of dedicated Missourians like the ones that are part of this conversation today, we will do this and get it done. So thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about briefly my police reform bill, and I'll open it up to questions as well.
Yeah. Before I open it up for questions, Senator Williams, I think my community, this community would really appreciate understanding what the reforms are. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with your PDF. And if you could just walk people through, because, you know, a lot of people understand what we're saying by common sense police reforms, but I think it's important to share at least some of the examples. Would that be okay with you?
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. hopefully everybody can see this 2021 Comprehensive Policing Reform Plan. And I'll have Senator Williams walk through some of the elements of it so that we know what we're talking about when we talk about common sense reforms.
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl, for sharing this with everyone. So what this is the 2021 Comprehensive Policing Reform Plan. First, I want to make clear that this was a plan that my office put together working with national organizations as well as local ones right here in the state of Missouri. We collected data. We looked at precedent as well as Missouri laws. How do we address these laws? How do we create environments that would ultimately make the public safe, but also improve the relationship between law enforcement and the communities that they serve? It has a couple points, and this is also for those who live in the 14th Senatorial District. You will get this also in the mail, and I will also make sure that everyone has a PDF copy of this to be able to share with folks so they can know exactly what this bill includes. So some of the 12 issues will address my comprehensive policing plan. One is eliminating no-knock warrants for any civil or non-violent offense. The reason this is important is because clearly what happened in St. Louis County, where the no-knock warrant was issued by a judge and ultimately led to someone's dog being killed for an unpaid utility bill. If I had to make a guess, that judge must and hopefully was under the impression that there was a far more severe situation. And that usually comes at a report that's being submitted by law enforcement. There has been theory around this that there was a situation where the woman's son, who would visit periodically, was being targeted by the St. Louis County Police Department, and they issued a warrant and hoped to find drugs and guns in her home. Once they issued that warrant, there was nothing found in that home and led to her dog being killed. And ultimately, she filed a lawsuit and won in court against St. Louis County Police Department. Also, prohibiting the use of chokeholds. The reason this is important is we saw what happened in Minnesota with George Floyd. If we don't ensure that there are consequences and penalties in place for use of chokeholds, we would lead this state to having a very similar situation to what happened in Minnesota. And we want to avoid that by holding police officers accountable for using this type of force, despite the fact that police departments do not train on this particular tactic of force today. Another one is requiring law enforcement agencies to have a written policy regarding the investigation of police officer involved deaths. This is important to where we know whenever there's a police involved death that there's an investigation done, and we have all the facts, and we make sure that those things are transparent throughout that process. Because we've seen in the past where there's been police involved deaths where someone was killed, but there was never an investigation, or that investigation was done internally and they never really released the details of the scope. Another one is reform use of force statute. And basically it requires officers to complete a minimum amount of training in regards to de-escalation tactics. So by doing this, this allows police officers to understand what de-escalation tactics are and how to go about them, and then ultimately create a uniform policy in the state of Missouri when it comes to how they engage and how they use tactics in terms of de-escalation when engaging with members of the community. We also have, sorry about that, because it's a little small for me too. We also have reform use of force statutes, and this is important. Developing regulation for use of tear gas. And that's important because we've seen with peaceful protests, we have situations where tear gas has been used and folks were peacefully protesting, or there may have been a situation where someone may have been detained and still were tear gassed, even though they were not in any situation to apply or use any type of physical force towards a member of law enforcement. We also have require law enforcement officers to intervene when officers inappropriately use physical force. As we're seeing now, with the facts are coming out with the George Floyd case, now police officers that were involved in that are kind of shifting the blame to each other. Now, if they had some type of accountability measure in place, which would say, hey, we've seen bad practices, or we've seen certain engagement from police officers, it helps us tackle this subculture of bad police officers who are engaging inappropriately with members of the community, and then ultimately help the police department get rid of those bad actors instead of enabling them to continue to practice bad habits and policies when out in the field.
Hey, Senator Williams, I'm going to stop you there.
Okay.
This is great, and it's exactly what I wanted you to do, to go into detail. We only have a couple more minutes, and
Okay,
before
two
people
more I
leave,
wanna-
if you have one more you want to do, and then I'd like to at least have 1 or 2 questions for you.
Absolutely, it's 2 more that's really important. One is eliminating citizens arrest. As we saw right here in St. Louis with the McCloskey case, if we eliminate citizens arrest, or what happened with Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, where we put more of the responsibility on citizens to utilize law enforcement, and law enforcement that have the training, and prevent there being a situation where law enforcement walks into a dangerous situation, or someone encounters someone and ultimately take those things into their hands, and potentially folks end up getting hurt, or someone defending or applying force and not really have the details. So we want to make sure that we really put law enforcement at the center of a lot of these confrontational situations and things that happen within the community. The last one I think is really important is banning sexual conduct between law enforcement and inmates or offenders while in custody. We want to make sure that there's no situation where a police officer is either one, having an inappropriate or engagement, or asking for some type of advance from someone who's been detained, or someone that's within a correctional facility, and ultimately using that to take advantage of that person. We think that's something that's extremely important. But those are some of them. We will make sure that we share the points for this bill. But I think it's really important just to understand that today we need to figure out, how do we create a safe environment for the community, and ultimately build the trust of police. And until we start focusing on those policies, addressing things like violent crime, and then hope to ultimately get quality police officers, is going to be very difficult, not only in St. Louis, but I think throughout the entire country.
Well, thank you so much. I'll tell you now that JCRC will be with you in Jefferson City, trying to advocate for these, and I hope people on the call will get inspired to join us on trips to Jefferson City, to write your legislators, to let folks know. In another meeting that I've been in, where I've heard you, Senator Williams, you talked about how to make this a bipartisan effort, and that your thoughts about how you're going to move this forward in a bipartisan way. Would you like to share that with our audience?
Absolutely. First and foremost, when I ran for the Missouri Senate, my biggest frustration, and the primary reason I ran for office, was I understood that there was no other profession where folks could make a conscious decision not to work with each other and still have a job. So as a state senator, I spent every single day not only fighting for the interest and advocating for the communities that I represent, as well as the state. I see the value in sitting down and working with my colleagues, regardless of where they come from and regardless of our disagreements. And we've been able to bring a very strong coalition to the table of folks who come from law enforcement backgrounds, Republicans and Democrats, as well as members of the community, activists, ACLU, Empower Missouri's been involved in this process. I think that it's really moving in a positive direction. I'm extremely optimistic that we can get this done next year, but it's going to be a all hands on deck approach. It's going to require the community. It's going to require all of you on this call today to really stress to local elected officials, elected officials throughout the state, and as well as continuing to engage each other and inform our neighbors on not only this particular bill, but how important it is to get it done now. And I'm really optimistic that we can get this across the finish line if we all work together. And right now it's moving in the right direction. I've been in consistent conversations with the governor, and hopefully he understands, as someone who was previously a member of law enforcement, that this would be something that would not only create a safe environment for law enforcement, but it would also put our state and region in a position to ultimately create a culture of good policing and eliminate this subculture of bad police officers who clearly has tainted the image of law enforcement.
Thank you. So it's 1:03. We'd like to be done by 1, but we have a great resource here in Senator Williams. I'd be happy to take 1 or 2 questions before we end the program. I see Kent's hand up. Is there anybody else who wants to ask a question so I can know? All right, go ahead, Kent.
Marilyn wants to ask.
Okay, so Kent and Marilyn will be our 2 questions.
As of this morning, if I remember the news correctly, there have been in St. Louis since June 1, 9 police officers shot. 1 tragically lost his life. When you see things like that happening increasingly, and the situation in Los Angeles a couple of days ago, how does that change the tone of the discussions that you're engaged in, toward the police, or just the tone of the narrative in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as I stated earlier, and I consistently make this clear, this isn't an us versus them situation. This is about addressing a subculture of bad police officers and then ultimately creating a safe environment for police officers to be able to tackle crime. For example, the governor had a crime bill which included a witness protection program, which I believe is great. But if you don't have a community that has trust in law enforcement, then how do we find those bad actors? And how do folks in the community feel comfortable coming forward and understanding that they may not become a criminal or a person that can potentially be viewed as a target in the process? When it comes to officers losing their death, I actually know the family of Officer Bohannon, and I had an opportunity to send a condolence letter to his wife and express my serious regret that his family has to go through something like this. My uncle, who drives me, retired 27 years as a police officer in St. Louis City Police Department. I'm confident he would have gotten 30 years had my aunt not been worried that he may not make it home safe at night. So I understand the challenges of law enforcement, but I don't think that police officers dying at the hand of bad actors and criminals in the community is mutually exclusive to the fact that we should have good police officers in our police departments, and we should be focused on building a strong relationship with the community.
Thank you, Senator Williams. Marilyn?
I think my question goes along these lines. And I don't like the term defunding police. What are your feelings on reallocating funds rather than adding additional police to forces, reallocating funds into the communities to build their infrastructures?
Absolutely. One, what we have to do is understand, as I stated before, when it comes to policy and when it comes to figuring out how do we pass productive legislation in the Missouri Senate and beyond, it should not be confined to buzzwords and someone sitting in their closet coming up with some term on how we should operate as legislators or everyday community individuals. I believe we should reimagine law enforcement. We should figure out how do we create resources, not only for those in the community, but for law enforcement to be able to lean on as well. I didn't come up with the term defund the police. If it was up to me, it would have been a completely different terminology because I don't really know exactly what that term means. But as a Black man who's been discriminated against by law enforcement as a college student home from Christmas vacation, I do know that racism and systemic issues in our police department does exist, but I still believe that they're good police officers and they do need to have the resources to protect and serve our community.
Thank you so much, Senator Williams. I appreciate everyone attending today. Before we head off, I just want to remind you our next forum is October 15th. We'll be looking at the November ballot. There's a lot of issues that need to be talked about and learned about, and hopefully we're going to get you early enough that you will have it before your absentee ballots. If you haven't asked for your absentee ballot yet and you plan to vote absentee, you can request them now. I'm going to turn this over, and in the chat, I'm going to put 2 websites where you can ask for your absentee ballot online. And I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Alyssa Banford, to bring us home here.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We just wanted to let you know about another opportunity on the same topic of racial equity in our region, and that we are very, very excited to be launching the Jewish Coalition for Racial Equity Conference. This is going to be a virtual conference that's going to be over a period of 5 weeks on Sunday mornings. And if you can't make Sunday mornings live, don't worry. We're going to have an opportunity for you to still join as a participant. This conference is for everyone. This conference is basically a 101. So whether you have a tremendous amount of experience working on racial equity, whether you have not gotten involved yet and you're looking at how to get involved, this would be a great opportunity for both. And of course, everyone in the middle. We have a tremendous number of community sponsors and partners on this program. They're all listed on the registration page. So if you go onto the registration page and you see that your congregation is not listed, maybe you can do a little nudge to your rabbi and say, hey, why aren't we involved? But we have some incredible speakers who will be leading us on a journey, including our keynote speaker, Yavila McCoy, who is the CEO of Dimensions. They do racial equity work and consultation. We're also bringing back some St. Louis favorites. Dr. Koach Baruch Fraser, who's currently in rabbinical school, and Teriro Nusnov, who is our consultant on this work, to be talking about anti-racism, what it means. We're also going to have a panel on housing and segregation, specifically in St. Louis. Then we're bringing back Mark Dollinger to talk about some extensive history about Jews and racism. And finally, we'll have a panel of leaders to help us determine how we move forward. If you have any questions on how to register or what that looks like, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is abanford@jcrc.org. And Cheryl just put the link for the Eventbrite registration in the chat. We really hope to see you as participants. Thank you so much. Cheryl, any last words?
No, Shana Tova. Happy New Year to everyone. My thanks to Senator Williams and JMO, who I know had to leave at 1. We appreciate your time on what is a dense and challenging issue, but the only way we can make change as a community is to educate ourselves, to understand the issues and what we can do to make a difference. So thank you all for being with us.
Cheryl, a quick question on voting. I had been told, and I'm not sure if this is true, that if you already requested an absentee ballot, but you want to go and vote at the county center, let's say at the crossings, do I need to surrender that absentee ballot, or
Yes,
can I just go and vote before I get it?
If you have requested an absentee ballot, you must physically have it and surrender it in order to vote. I know that's the case at the polls. I see Senator Williams nodding. Is that different if you go to the election authority? I don't believe it is.
No, it's not any different if you go to the election authorities. And what I would highly recommend everyone to do, please pay attention, because sometimes those ballots are not completed correctly, and the St. Louis County and/or City Board of Elections will reach out to you. If they reach out to you, please respond and go wherever you need to go to ensure that your ballot is counted. And then also, if you have any concerns or questions on whether or not they received it, feel free to give them a call and make sure that they received your ballot also.
But you want to go to the polls, you have to.
All right, so our October 5th issue, we'll talk about voting in depth. Again, we did that in July. We're going to do it again. We want to make sure everybody's vote is counted.
Hey,
Thank
Cheryl,
you all. Have a good day.
Cheryl,
Happy and healthy New Year. Bye-bye.
One more quick thing.
Oh,
I
yes,
want
Senator
to say.
Williams. Go ahead.
Anyone that's interested in human trafficking, I'll be working very close with Maryland as well as others around human trafficking, and we'll be leading that at the Capitol. So anyone that wants to be a part of that, if we do a virtual event, please email me. My email's in the chat. I'm also looking forward to working with you, Cheryl, on this issue as well. It's something that is extremely important to focus on as it happens in alarming numbers in St. Louis and beyond. So please keep that on your radar. And I hope to have everyone a part of that as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Thank you. Everyone stay safe.
Thank you. JCRC.
And